So our event today is intended to examine the unique challenges women face with money and provide specific direction on how to manage it. We'll start with a discussion between the panelists, and then we'll open it up to the floor for all of you guys, and hopefully you'll have some good questions after we finish going through some stuff. I just want to make sure, did everyone get one of these index cards? Yes. All right, and so we're going to start by going through this wonderful packet that Susan has put together. And she's going to lead us through all these points.
Yes,
Or at least.
I'll get to it pretty quickly. So the only things my parents ever taught me about money were God will provide. If you max out your credit card, just get another one. And if you don't change your name when you take your husband's name, you'll never qualify and get any credit.
Which was probably true.
No, all of those are wrong. They're totally wrong. Everything I know about money is self-taught. Often after making some huge financial blunder that I then had to dig myself out of. So I don't mind saving you all a couple decades of pain by sharing with you what I've learned. If you take the emotion out of it, money really is only math. It's only math. It doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, it shouldn't be complicated. If you've got somebody trying to coach you about how complicated it is, let me take over your money for you, run away. I heard a podcast a few years back. It was fabulous. And I was like, I got to remember that for when my daughters are old enough to teach them about money. And it was everything you need to know about managing money should fit on an index card. And so I stole that and made up my own index card of everything I think you should know about money. And so you have it in your hands. I made mine a little bigger, hopefully, so I don't need my reading glasses. So number one, pay yourself first. Save 15 to 20% of your income. I know that sounds impossible, but you need to set yourself up for success. Use payroll deductions for your savings. Once it doesn't hit your checking account, it's invisible. It really makes it a lot easier. Put your savings into a separate account that you can't access easily. One of my favorite Warren Buffett quotes on savings: do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. And it could seem impossible, but you can start with just saving $10 a week. And then pat yourself on the back. Enjoy the sense of accomplishment. But then increase your savings by 1% every year, 1% of your salary every year, until you reach that 20% goal. And if you can't save weekly, if you can't save monthly, then at the end of the year, take your tax refund, or your EITC, or your year-end bonus if you get one, or your K-1 profit sharing check if you get one, and put the entire thing in savings. The important thing is just to open that account and start doing it. And then, once it becomes a habit, it won't seem so hard. So, it's number one.
I have a quick question about that. For the separate account that you were saying that you can't access easily, what type of account would you think? Because, checking account you can usually access pretty easily.
Well, where I started was one of the first companies I worked for that had a 401k or a simple IRA that they would match. So their account was with Fidelity. So I opened a savings account at the same Fidelity that my investment account was at. So it's there, it's your money, it's liquid, but there's no ATM.
Right.
There's no debit card attached to it. You really have to think about it like a week in advance to get it out of that brokerage account and into your account.
Okay.
But even if it's just a savings account that's across the city or across town that you have to plan ahead to get that money rather than, oh yeah, I'll buy another round of drinks, sure.
I do a very similar thing. So I have our regular checking savings with Citibank, and we use our 401k as Merrill Lynch, and I have a separate account at Merrill Lynch, and that money, they invest in. Some of them, they'll say, this investment goes in for a year, we're buying a note for, and so you can't, some of it's liquid, but you do need to get it out, and that's kind of, you do not touch in case of emergency. And then everything I do on a daily basis would be from my Citibank.
My account now is with Vanguard because that's who Available Light uses for our simple IRA.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay, pay yourself first. Number 2, max out your 401k or your 529 or your IRA tax advantage accounts. Maximize your employer's matching contribution to one of these tax advantage savings accounts by contributing at least 3% of your salary, because if your employer offers this kind of a plan, they only match what you put in. And this is like found money. It doesn't make any sense to let it drift away if you can afford 3% at first. Or get yourself there in 3 years by increasing your savings 1% a year. Contributing enough to get your full employer matched is a great start. Just know that it's not the maximum amount that you can contribute to a retirement plan. Start your 401k or simple plan, or whatever your employer offers, the very day you start working. Aim for funding to the max you are legally allowed to contribute per year. This is different and often much more than the amount you need to contribute just to get the company to put in their company match. If your company offers a 401k, you can contribute as much as $18,000 a year with the tax advantages. Once you get over 50 years old, then it's $24,000 a year. Not all of us are in that category, but I am. We offer a simple at Available Light, and so the max that you can do a year is $12,500 a year, and $15,500 if you're. If your employer does not offer a 401k or a simple, fund your own individual IRAs to the max that you're allowed per year. These are much lower amounts, but you might as well get the tax advantage that you can. SEP IRAs, Roth IRAs are $5,500 a year, or $6,500 if you're over 50. And you also need to know that you need more retirement savings than just what the max of these federally tax advantage programs are. So once you get to whatever the max is, $18,000, say, for a 401k, then you're going to have to open another account to keep saving more than that if you're going to make it to retirement, because that's not going to be enough per year. You have to be 65, or a lot of you it's going to be 72 by the time you're allowed to retire. It's not 65 anymore.
I'd love to do a quick poll. This is not a question of whether you're taking advantage of it, but does your employer offer a match or a 401k plan? Just, can you raise your hand if they do? That is amazing.
That is amazing.
401k but not matching.
Yeah.
Okay. That's something though. Okay. That's fantastic.
That is amazing. The IALD did a compensation and benefits survey in 2016, and I was quite dismayed by how many in the lighting industry still don't offer retirement plans.
If they offer matching, is that tax deductible or is there a tax advantage?
No.
It's not, okay, it's just that.
No, the advantage is getting and keeping good.
Well, yeah,
Yeah. No, there's no tax.
there's that tax advantage.
I mean, it's an expense.
Okay, so it
the
comes
same
off
way
the books as an expense.
Payroll is an expense, and other benefits are an expense. Number 3, pay yourself first again. This is a corollary for business owners. This was advice that I got very early on when Steve and I were starting Available Light. So if you're looking to start a small business, or even if you're self-employed, pay yourself first. If you own a company or are self-employed, pay yourself a salary on time, every time. If you got to make payroll, you will soon figure out if you are being profitable or not, even if the payroll is just to yourself. Or you will soon figure out how to shift things around so that you are profitable. So the next time payroll comes around, you've got the cash flow. So, number 4. This one my daughters have already gotten. Pay off all credit cards in full, 2-0, every month and on time. pay your credit card bill in full every month before the grace period ends. This is probably the most important thing of all these 10 points. Do not use credit card to finance purchases and not to buy stuff you can't afford. Credit cards are a really, really expensive way to borrow money. The average credit card interest rate, I looked it up because I was going to talk to you all, is 16%
That's low.
per year. That's the average. Most of them nowadays, 24%, 27%, it's ungodly. And as an example, as a contrast, the average car loan right now is 3.8%. Some of them can be as low as 1% if it's or 0% if they're trying to get you in the door, right? Get this loan off my hands. The average mortgage rate right now is 4.65% for 30-year fixed, 4.21% for 15-year fixed. Federal student loan rate, 3.75%. You shouldn't be borrowing money on your credit card. But a lot of us are already in that position. A lot of us have balances on our credit cards that we can't pay off at the end of the month. So, what if I can't pay off my credit card every month? Come up with a payment plan, like tonight, that you're going to pay off your credit card in 3 months, or 7 months, or 1 year, until your current credit card is 0. In the meantime, put your credit card in the drawer and don't use it again until the balance is 0.
Melanie?
Well, I just want to say one thing about this is if you are in that situation, especially because all of these other loan deals on cars and whatever are so low now, don't feel you can't call the credit card company and say, I'm about to cut up my credit card because this is just too high rate. It is negotiable now.
It is.
Some of them will lower, if you have a credit card and you've got a balance on it, call them and say, this is too high, I don't want this card anymore, and they usually will lower the rate for you, so it's worth making the phone call at least.
And another thing, this is, I guess I have some friends that have been in scenarios with some credit card debt, and one solution that they've done, because again, the interest rate is through the roof and you're climbing an unending wall in some cases, so maybe finding a way to loan that money from friends or family or someone else who won't charge you interest, just to get meet bottom, right, and then you pay them off.
Yeah. And the last thing you want to do is take like your student loan debt and refinance with a credit card company. Don't do that.
There's also the discussion on credit, and building credit.
Yes.
So I use charge cards and not credit cards. I use American Express
Right,
exclusively.
but you have to pay every month.
Which it forces you to pay every month.
But it goes towards your
Or we
credit.
have to- But it doesn't support your credit. You need to have a credit
Right.
card.
That's how.
That's right.
They're out to get you.
Keep your 800s and all
So that was my next point. If you need a credit card and you know you don't have the discipline to pay it off every month, get an American Express card. Because the rules for that are you have to pay it off to 0 every month. So what are credit cards good for? The perfect segue.
Sorry.
No, it's great.
It's a shill.
You do need a credit card, especially as a woman. You need a credit card when you're traveling as an emergency safety net. Women especially need to have a credit card in their own name, and not just a joint credit card. And even if you have a joint credit card with a significant other that you trust implicitly, which I do, put your name on the top line and put his name on the second line, because whoever's name is on the top line of that joint account is who's going to get the credit rating for it, not both of you, the person on the top line.
So I have a question about that. That is interesting because I have a credit history of 20 years, even though I'm not that old, because my parents put me on their credit card back, growing up. So that counts as my credit history, even though I'm not the main credit. And you can do that for your kids to get them credit history.
That's true, and I have done that.
So what's the difference in being the main person?
On
So So credit history versus building credit in your
Yeah,
credit
there's a
score.
difference.
So
Credit
you have a
history is
history of
like-
having credit, but you don't necessarily have a credit score.
Well, I do, well,
Did you
my,
have
part
one?
of my credit score is good because I have such a long history.
For history.
Yeah, so it is affecting my credit score. So that's what,
So it's feeding back.
yeah. I know. Well, I was gonna say that, you know, if you have kids as they're growing up, you can put them on, and for me, that's work to get a lot more credit years in history than I should have, to help them in the future.
So you do need a credit card to establish credit rating, especially if you don't have a credit rating yet. What I've told my kids to do is to get a credit card.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're young, they're only 23, but your credit, the amount of credit you're allowed is maybe $500.
Right.
But get the credit card and put some bill on an automatic pay on your credit card, like your electric bill. Every single month, the electric bill goes to the credit card first. And then put paying the credit card bill on the automatic pay of your bank account, so that it's always paid, it's always on time, and then maybe a year or two, you can take that credit card out of the drawer and have a credit score that's 750 instead of 500.
I want to make one point, what you said about having the name on the top gives you the credit. Also remember, the name on the top also gives you the liability. So if you're ever in a relationship with somebody and you have some type
That's
of,
an excellent point.
yeah, that any kind of tax, if you have an investment account that earns interest or any kind of tax liability that's going to be associated with the account, if your name is on the top, you're going to have that liability.
Yeah. But when you look at, you know, my credit score and my husband's credit score, the things that I'm on the top line are on mine, and the things where he's on the top line are on his. And we have different scores, which is ludicrous to me, but it is true.
So can you talk about that? Do you know why?
I would just advise you to look at your name.
You both have the same number, or it's maybe out? Maybe there's some discrepancy between that.
He's on the
No,
top of
we
something they don't pay.
Credit cards,
That's all.
same bank account for 30 years, so. The banks are still kind of stuck in the 20th century, the 19th century.
So you're running the business and he's got the higher credit score.
Yeah. So you need, there are other things you need a credit card for, to establish a credit rating. You need a credit card to rent a car, especially, you know, if you're traveling. They won't take a debit card to rent a car.
Well, they do take the debit card, but they freeze it. Yeah, it is expensive.
They freeze like $500 or something
Yeah.
on credit card.
Unless you're.
And they take the money out.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how they out.
And if you're shopping online, don't shop online with a debit card. You need the legal protections that are in all that fine print that none of us read of your credit card when you're shopping online. And number 5, they are out to get you. We're talking about credit cards and banks. Oh, I already talked about this. Women get credit in your own name and on joint accounts, put your name first. Your credit score is going to rule your life. Credit bureaus keep your records on file for 7 to 10 years. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, I know you know their names because they've been in the headlines recently. And look at your credit report. Don't just go to freecreditreport.com and look at your score, because your score is good to know, you know, because that's when, if you're applying for a mortgage or something, people are going to look at your score. But you actually need to look at the report once a year to make sure there isn't fraud or other things accumulating on your report, so that you can stop it and contact whoever this is, Experian or Equifax, and get it taken off. But if you don't know it's there and you let it go for years and years and years, then it's a little bit harder to fight it.
You can only, look at them once a year, right?
You can only look at them once a year, but what you could do, if you're concerned about it, is look at Equifax once a year, and then 4 months later, look at Experian once a year, and then 4 months later, look at TransUnion once a year. So you're actually checking it 3 times a year, not once a year, but looking at different ones.
What's the best way to look at your, what's the best way to look at your credit?
Annualcreditreport.com. Very clear.
There's one that comes through the government, that's actually, that's the one, that's the government.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay for it, so all those people who are trying to get you to log onto their account for your pre-credit score, what they're really trying to do is sell you loans or sell you credit cards.
Do you know anything about the freezing of our credit reports? Because I know they're making it free now.
I don't know.
You don't know if they're going to do it?
Well, I have that. I have on my credit report, I have a special thing that they have to call me. So what happens is, if I try to get instant credit when you go to the store like Target and they say, oh, would you like to save 5% today? I can never get those cards because they will not process an instant credit. But it helps in terms of your protecting your identity and protecting fraud. I've never had a problem at all.
Did you have to pay when you locked your accounts?
No, I just called the
Okay.
3 credit unions and I locked all 3 of the credit accounts, so that now if somebody tries to open up a credit card, they have to contact me and speak to me. And that's another thing that people don't know, is that the more credit cards you apply for, the more it affects your credit rating. And it's one of the things that I've had to talk to my kids about, is like every time they offer you the 10% off and you say, okay, yeah, sure, why not, I'm gonna this, that, and each time it hits your credit rating every time you do that.
Yeah, the more cards you have, the lower your score.
The more they check it. the more it's required.
But I also heard that if you pay your credit cards off every month, that it doesn't, that you should carry a balance every once in a while.
Especially the higher, especially they look for the 20 and above for higher credit, which is ridiculous.
Well, they want to know that you're
Sort of
going to use the good credit.
You have to keep some little balance, you have to pay the minimum amount.
I always pay it off, but I always heard
So
that.
be careful with
No.
that, even if it's $3.
Somebody who's trying to sell you a credit card has probably told you that. I've never heard that. Your accountant did. No,
I pay them all.
I don't think that's true.
Just a tiny little amount.
So, so the sucker punch is credit card companies want you to mess up. Credit card companies are predatory lenders. They make it too easy to borrow more than you can pay back in 1 month, because they make more money on interest, late fees, higher interest rates every time you make a mistake. And beware of the grace period. You think you have a monthly credit card statement. What you actually have is like a 21-day credit card statement. They delay, the due dates are never 30 days, and then they delay mailing the statement. The date on the statement might be June 1st, but they don't even mail it out until June 9th. And then it's due on the 21st. So, yeah, make sure you're never late, because
But
the
if
minute
you do miss them, you can call them and say, hey, my mail came late, or I didn't get it, and can you, there was a late fee, and they will. If you're someone who doesn't do it all the time, if it happens once a year, they'll always take the late fee, or, you know,
that's awesome.
yeah, they definitely will.
And they make mistakes too often, like I've been given late fees when they just forgot or like messed up the bank date somehow, even though it's theoretically automated.
And they also can change your due date without
Oh,
telling you.
yeah.
They do that all the time.
That's another, I call and had all my due dates synced, so, I mean, you said put on auto pay, I put nothing on auto pay, because I like to sit and look every single month, and it gives me discipline, but I had a problem that my Chase kept coming at the wrong date, and I called them and said, could you move that to the 5th of the month? And now my Amex, my Chase, my mortgage, everything is due right around the same time. I know it's down the last week of the month, and that gives me enough time for anything that's, you know, I do it on Citibank online, but I don't do anything on auto pay, because I've caught a few mistakes of misbillings and misinformation.
Well, part of the reason I use auto pay is I'm very date terrible.
Yeah.
Challenge. Yes. And even though I'm in charge of the money and I run this big company, a week can go by
Yeah.
and I don't even know it's Tuesday.
It's a big thing,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that is my way of getting over the making sure it's always on time, is to have it automatic. Because also, the automatic, they send you a little email that says, your automatic's about to pay. It's like, oh shit, do you have the balance? Okay, I'm good. So whatever
works for you, sure.
Whatever works. Getting them all on the same date is probably an awesome way of remembering when everything's due.
because then I only have to spend once, right?
Right.
Except I have to write the $4 check for a class trip.
Right.
So obviously never take a cash advance on your credit card. That's even more than 27%. And never owe more than 60% of your credit limit, even if you pay off your balance to zero every month.
Right.
Credit card companies can penalize you heavily if you go even 1 cent over your limit. And they're famous for putting an unexpected charge on at the last minute, and then, oh, you're over, and then you're paying not only the interest for this month, but you're paying it for next month too, until you get back to zero again.
So every time I've ever had a really high balance on my credit card for a past amount, they called me and said, oh, your balance is high, would you like to extend it?
Well, say yes, when they
I do,
offer,
sure.
when they offer you a
Forget
higher
about it.
credit limit, definitely increase your limit, but don't spend all of it.
Right.
If you don't pay off
Oh, yeah.
in every month, if you carry a balance, you should never owe more than 20% of your credit limit. If you consistently owe more than 20% of your credit limit, it will lower your credit score and raise your interest rate. That's coming and going. So, beware. So debt. You do need debt for some things. That's for big things. Set up an account at a credit union, a small local savings bank, somebody who really needs your business. Your Wells Fargo, Capital One, Bank of America, Citibank, they do not have your best interests at heart. Most big national banks are also predatory lenders. The overdraft fees, the monthly fees, the ATM fees, the minimum balances, penalties. It can really ruin your checking account, and then as a result ruin your credit score too. Houses are expenses, not investments. I know they were for my parents, but even for my generation, it is no more that buying a house is a good way to save for retirement. It just doesn't work that way anymore. But a lot of financial advisors will tell you that it still does.
Why isn't it?
2008.
You might not get the appreciation.
Yeah.
But if you bought when it was low, you back.
If
But you
if
don't
you
know what it's
did,
gonna
but
be
if you
when
bought it when it was low,
But if you bought
60,
Apple stock when it was next to nothing, you would have made money too.
That's
I think the best advice,
It's a risk.
my dad is a state attorney, and the best advice he gave me is, you're gonna live there.
Right.
It's not an investment.
How
If it turns out to be an investment, that's great, but you don't want to buy a place as an investment and then get stuck there for 15 years because you can't afford to get out.
Yeah. So by all means, buy a house, buy a condo when you're financially ready. But you're financially ready when you can put down 20%, when you know you're going to stay in the area for at least 5 to 7 years, when you can qualify for a fixed rate mortgage, and you still have enough of a cash cushion for repairs and maintenance. I mean, I own a house, it's wonderful, but it's not, anybody who bought a house, for example, in 2008 is still underwater 8 years later. Underwater means they can't sell it for what they bought it for. So buy the house that makes you feel good and then where you want to live. And when you sell it, feel lucky if you sell it for the exact same amount you bought it for. It's a different world than my parents, your grandparents grew up in. Bought a house for $50,000 and sold it when they retired for $750,000.
Beautiful thing.
Real estate isn't that way anymore. And don't get cute with the financing either. If you can't afford payments on a boring old 30-year fixed mortgage rate, you can't afford the house. This one I put on here, I don't know if this is true. I'm going to rethink. Aim to pay off your mortgage before you retire. I'm not sure that's true.
I don't think that's true.
I just don't think it's realistic anymore.
I think the least amount of debt you can carry, the better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
a good aim.
Yeah.
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about that very topic and tax laws and deducting your, your principal versus your interest based on your salary. So now it's sort of, not everybody can deduct their interest.
Right.
So I went away with the tax law.
It's
I know we're gonna.
But I think New Jersey and New York are changing, and you'll be able to.
I was gonna
deduct.
say,
Yeah, New York,
it's
New
very
Jersey.
New York,
Yeah, but
New
you won't be
Jersey,
able
and
to
then it
deduct your
also
property
depends on the
tax,
amount of
so-
your mortgage, so if you're under now, it was $1 million, now it's what, 700 in New York, or 500, it was 5 or 7, it went back and forth, so you still can deduct the interest, so then it's worth carrying the mortgage, I think. It's
I
good
think-
debt versus.
Well, I think that if you can afford to pay the mortgage
Right.
off and you have a mortgage at 4 or 4.5%, you're better to pay that mortgage off and not have that tax deduction. And then also, I guess, everybody's got to look at their individual, whether they're paying that, adjusted tax rate or where their individual tax rate is. But I think that if you pay your mortgage off and you don't have that monthly, not every month to pay, you can put that money towards savings. But as somebody said in the crowd, it's pretty unrealistic with today's housing market to be able to expect to pay a mortgage off.
Right, that's why I looked at that, it's like,
Yeah.
And it's like
I
the
don't think
lowest
that's-
percentage rate you can have, so hold on to it
Yeah.
and use your
That's
cash
true.
for what you.
use your cash for other things.
Yeah, to invest in something that you'll make back more than you
Yeah.
would be paying in your mortgage.
Yeah, I think that might be better.
If that was in
advice.
response to paying it off early versus you're saying pay it off before you retire, which I guess would just be, you have to buy it when you're
Depends
30
when you
or
buy it,
something.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if
Yeah.
you can pay it off, it's also nice to not pay off the whole amount and just get a small home equity loan so that you're still getting
Yeah.
a credit line.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's very realistic anymore.
Yeah.
But, so, number 7.
I can get the fast up there.
Oh my God, I just got
Right in the checklist.
Right, what the heck? Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Buy insurance, make a will. Just like a house is not an investment, it's a place to live. Insurance is about protection, it is not an investment. Somebody trying to sell you a whole life as a great investment for your retirement is because he or she makes a really big commission on it. Buy only term life insurance.
What's the difference?
Term life,
You buy for a length of
You
time,
buy
so you
a
buy
term.
20 years,
10
15 years.
15 years, right.
And you get nothing at the end.
Right, it's not, whole life is set up so that when the end of the policy nears, then you get money back from what you paid in.
And or so if I bought a 20-year term and I'm 46, if I die within those 20 years, whatever you buy it for, $5 million, $1 million, my kids or my husband, the beneficiary, would get that money. If I live to 21 years, that goes away, it just disappears, there's no value to it. I would have to buy, so you can buy a series of 20-year terms or 15-year terms, or
Does it get more expensive though?
it does get more expensive. So the earlier you buy it, it can be very cheap term.
Mhm.
Whole life insurance does have some value, and that depends on the position you're in,
And how it's invested.
if you go and you have, due to different vehicles or whatever, the earlier you buy it, the less expensive it is, and then if you should pass at any point, that money is there to give to your children or to your family. So it's a discussion evaluation. My husband and I have a combination of both. And we did buy it when I was pregnant with my daughter before, which is a good thing because, as you get older, it goes up substantially. And you never know when something's gonna happen to you physically, like high blood pressure or an autoimmune disease. And once you have that, it gets much harder to get the insurance.
To qualify
Yeah, sure.
for life insurance or to get a good price
Good
for
rate.
it.
And you have to go through physicals and everything.
Yeah.
So if you're
better.
concerned about that, then wouldn't whole life insurance be the better policy?
It's
to
much
go
more
with?
expensive.
It's extremely expensive, whereas term life insurance,
Right.
the earlier you buy it, the cheaper it is.
Right.
But it only does one thing.
Right.
If you die, you get paid. And so there's a term, you buy it, like you said, for
But
10
then it
years,
would
20
be
years.
much more expensive after the end of the 20 years, and if you were to go buy it again.
That's correct.
Right.
But you may not need to buy, I mean, it's basically based on you're protecting your loved ones so that they'll have the money to pay for your funeral and all, or if, for instance, we bought it when we had our kids,
Right.
like Melissa did, and, now they're 25 and,
can
whatever,
take
and we
care of
don't really
themselves.
need as big a policy because
Okay.
the policy is for things like if my husband passed away and they were still 15 or something and I'd have to pay their tuition and, it's to cover those sorts of things for your loved ones,
So
but
it's a different.
those things kind of go away as they, after your 20-year term is over, now you don't have the same obligation.
And buying their own term life
Exactly.
insurance to cover their kids.
You know,
So not
it's
everybody
stages. So we bought 20-year term when I was pregnant, now my daughter's 12, so we're 13 years into it. We said, you know what, I'm gonna take another 20-year term, or 15-year term on my husband, even though he's older now, it still is relatively inexpensive, and at that point, God forbid, whatever happens, we don't need to worry about it, my house will be paid off, my kids will be through college, and at that point, whatever happens, I don't care if it goes away. Me, because I have different assets, like the building and other things, we have some term because there were other, and then whole life on that, because there would be buy-sell agreements and other things like that that would have to be paid off. And if I go and I didn't have the whole life. So it really depends on and that's where a CFA does come into use. They're not always just trying to sell you, but you can talk rates and negotiating rates with them. If you're using someone that your company's using, very often, they'll give you a better rate than if your company's using Vanguard and you go to Vanguard, you often get the advantage of being part of a bigger client than if you just went by yourself.
You can also get policies through various trade organizations, like I think even, IES offers it, and some companies, when I was working for Fish and Rents back in the day, they had some kind of, you could buy into some very reasonable term life policy too. So look around, because there's.
Our 401k lets everyone buy $100,000 on themselves, and they can get a second policy for their spouse for almost nothing. And when they offered it this year, almost everyone took it because it was cheaper than, and they didn't have to take a physical.
Right.
So we have some people who are type 1 diabetics or have had cancers and other things that would never, that they could at least get the 100 grand to cover
But you
death
can do
benefits.
multiple policies?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can.
I think the
For
importance,
example, we took
But don't over.
term life insurance, which expires this year, in fact, for me. But my kids are 23 and 21. And whatever we bought it for 20 years ago, the policy was, let's say, $600 a year. Well, this last policy was $600 a year. But if I now tomorrow go to buy another term life policy, the premium is like $8,000 or $10,000 a year. So locking in that rate when you're young is a really good idea. If you have loved ones that you want to protect with insurance. And that's what insurance is.
So at what age would you suggest starting doing a term life policy?
Today.
Wow.
Yeah.
You could do it now, because then if you should get married and have children in the next 20 years, at least you have, and it's really starting at your age, Tara, is relatively inexpensive.
but I think the other thing to mention is disability insurance.
There you go.
Right.
Because I think the main purpose of any kind of insurance is to protect the income.
Right.
And if you have no income, all of the things we're talking about make no sense whatsoever. So most people don't take into account the disability. If something were to happen to you, state disability is really not adequate. And to take an additional disability policy to protect your income.
Or something like an Aflac, or which, we offer, and some people take and some people don't, but that's,
But it's also important as a small business owner, when it's your name, you're the product, and if you do become disabled, you literally can't do business. If you are a business owner or you're a freelancer, you're a sole proprietor, it is a good idea to get disability insurance.
Disability insurance.
There's
And health
no-
insurance.
No, well, of course, health insurance, yeah. Just bring up disability, yeah.
Disability is very important too.
Yeah.
Hopefully your employer offers it, but if they don't, you probably need disability insurance if you have a family that you're trying to protect. Talk about your death. Estate planning is for people you leave behind. Make it easier for them. Make a will, write a healthcare directive, have that money talk with your parents. Do they have a will? Have they named an executor? Do they have long-term care insurance? Have they designated a healthcare proxy? Have they designated a financial power of attorney? Your parents' old age can bankrupt you. Been there, done that. In your 30s, worry about what would happen to your family if you died or couldn't work. In your 60s, worry about what would happen if you lived longer than you ever imagined. Right. Hey, invest in the market. open an account with Vanguard. Here I am plugging Vanguard. They're inexpensive, they don't charge a large fee, and buy inexpensive index funds. Start early, start small, invest often, stay in for the long haul. And then ignore the market mostly. Just keep adding your little bit to it every year.
Is that, I don't know a lot about Vanguard or investing in general, and it's something I've been trying to learn about. I would love to talk to a human, even if it's just once at the beginning, but like everything I do in research on nowadays is all online and
That's true.
computers. I will pay them a decent chunk of money to talk to a person once. Do you know how to go about
I think Vanguard will.
Yeah, there are people, and Merrill Lynch, we have people and they have
You can
high
make an
investment
appointment.
net worth people and low,
Yeah.
that, if you have X amount of money to Y, you can
Absolutely.
talk to this person, you get this amount of help, and then if you have more, but there are definitely people that if you call one of the major firms and say you want a financial advisor to speak with,
They have live people, they really do.
Yeah, I mean, Fidelity in the city there's actually
locations.
offices all over the place, and you
Fidelity
just walk
and
in and talk,
Charles
sit
Schwab
down.
is another good one,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
so is
I
Vanguard.
mean, and you should, it's great.
Just to explain to you some of the mumbo jumbo that's out there of, okay, I'm supposed to invest in index funds, what's an index fund?
quite frankly, you shouldn't be paying them up front. So if they,
Yeah.
right, so you should, and go to multiple, I would say, go to 2 or 3, and find out what would be their fees if you invest with them. And it's just like we bring products into your offices as reps, we bring samples, right? They will give you a proposal, they should tell you your fees and everything else, and then you can make an informed decision.
Yeah. And I really feel like you can do this on your own, you don't need a broker, you don't need an expensive financial planner. There are times in your life that you need like a financial plan. You're about to have a kid, you're about to retire, there's a big change in your financial picture. And at the time that you need financial advice, I would very strongly recommend that you hire a financial planner that's just a flat fee. They don't have anything to sell you, they don't make a commission on anything. It's a pretty big chunk of change, I wouldn't do it every year. But a financial advisor that commits to fiduciary standards will sit down and look at the whole picture for you. I mean, we're not experts in insurance, we're not experts in investing, we're experts in lighting. So sometimes you just need somebody to sit down and say, okay, well, hey, here's your will and here's your insurance, and I think you're undercovered here, and I think you need to save more over there. Whatever the big plan is, what are your goals? It's definitely worth the money to hire someone to advise you. But you don't need a broker who's going to charge you without you quite seeing it, a percentage of every single dime you make.
Well, so I was just interested in this. So I did the same thing with Fidelity. I went to them and I talked to them about what we can do with our money and all my retirement accounts from various other jobs. And, they want to put it in a managed account, but you're saying index funds versus managed account. Well, I don't know, you don't even say anything about managed account. Would you recommend index over managed account?
Definitely.
But,
Managed
they
accounts have high
try to
fees.
push that. They
Yeah,
push it.
because they make money.
They
on it.
don't make any commission on
That's why
that.
some of the big things she was saying, sometimes their advice is not always in your best interest.
Yeah,
Right.
and sometimes they can be pushy.
Managed accounts
Well, there are
are.
various certifications and levels that can help with that.
Yeah.
I have a sister who is
A financial advisor, fiduciary. That's awesome.
maybe she talks about all the different
Can
things.
you do
Because I feel
that?
like we
Can you
would
give
do
us
it
all
justice
the
to try, she's in Florida, so she could Skype in and just lay out, at least get everybody ready for that first meeting. If they
Well,
haven't.
even Warren Buffett, who's probably the most famous money manager and investment broker of all time and a multi-billionaire, I read an article, I guess it was in Forbes several years ago, that he is instructing all of his heirs to just buy Vanguard index funds and not try to figure it out themselves. Because over the years, they did just as well as the experts did.
Without paying any fees.
Without
Very little
paying
fees, we don't pay anything, right?
Except his heirs have plenty of money that they don't, right? But there are some managers that do beat the indexes and consistently, but you have to be really active and have a financial advisor that you trust
Yeah.
who's gonna be watching that on an ongoing basis, because you can't try and time the market. You're working, you're running, you're doing what you're doing. So you have to have someone that you're gonna have several phone calls with or meetings with that's gonna have plans with you if you wanna go the route of the managed funds. There definitely are managers and funds that do beat the indices.
Well,
You know,
but they just
and-
say, you want 60/40, 50/50,
Right.
you pick a number out of a hat, I don't know.
Well, no, they're basing it on on
Your
technically
age, yeah,
should be
risk.
on your.
You're gonna give them a
But-
risk profile and an age, and
Exactly.
they're gonna figure out where
Right.
they should be.
Well, they'd ask me. so-
Well, the very first time I had money to invest, it was my very first job that they had a 401k or a CY or whatever it was, and the company was gonna match. It's like, okay. So I did. I called a Fidelity or a Charles Schwab or somebody, a broker. It's like, explain this to me. He sat me down and said, okay, so do you want growth or do you want income?
That's exactly how they.
And I was like, of course, yes. I had no idea that he was talking in code.
Yeah.
I had a lot that I needed to learn about what all these things mean.
And I think that's a good point too. Know your own needs and don't let somebody else tell you what your needs are. Because a big mistake I've made is listen to other people who say, you need income, when really all I needed was growth.
Yeah.
You know what you need, you know
Yeah.
what your income is, how long you're gonna keep working for, what your goals are. Don't be swayed by other people.
So growth is the risk, income's the riskier?
No, well, income is a little riskier because income actually is, and as you get more to retirement, if you don't have an income, like you have an income, so you don't need an income.
Yeah.
But when you get closer to retirement, you might look at something that's a high dividend paying stock that's going to provide you with the income, to give you a little more risk on the principal. Whereas when you're younger, later on, you can invest it for income.
So maybe go in with a card with the cheat sheet so
Well,
they can't steer you
But
away?
see, so what's good for me is not good for you.
But they give you these tests
So what's good for
also.
me is
Yeah,
not good
yeah,
for
I
you, because
know,
you're
but
different
like,
ages,
would you
different
make
life
a decision beforehand and,
Right, so what happens
have
is
some
somebody
ideas.
with the best intentions can give you advice, but it may not be the best advice
Yes.
because it's not the best advice for you.
How do you feel about annuities?
No, not at all. I would not buy them. It's a huge commission for the salesperson. And at the end of the day, you're not making very much. Your money's locked into something that's not making very much money. It would be like going to the bank nowadays. I mean, when my parents, when I was young, when my parents were teaching me about savings, you buy a CD. But you go now to a bank to buy a CD and they're paying 0.5%.
Right.
And you can't get your money back out for whatever this month
Well, that
or
was,
Or you
year.
have
that
to
was a
pay a
different
heavy
economic
fee.
time.
I feel the same way about annuities.
But I do believe in mixing some bonds into your portfolio as you're getting older and closer to retirement.
Bonds aren't annuities.
No, right, but a safer instrument you want to have as you get older, you want to reduce your risk and move more to safe instruments or heavier weighted to safe instruments.
So the last couple are pretty easy. Invest in yourself. Invest in yourself, invest in your education, in your well-being, in your health. Being healthy will save you a lot of money. Go outside every day, have hobbies. Shopping is not a hobby. And make goals that are meaningful to you. I might be saving for a house, but you might be saving for that vacation in Machu Picchu. I mean, your goals are what your goals are, and you don't have to adopt other people's goals, but save for them ahead of time, rather than going into debt for your goals. And then, number 10 was just bring joy, give what you can. I'm a firm believer in giving back, and if you ever get to that point where you're feeling financially stable, turn around and give back. And if not, give some of your time too. Do what you can to support the social safety net. I also have some places to go to find a free financial coach. I've got a couple of Financial Clinic is a fabulous organization. The main office is in New York. And it's just thefinancialclinic.org. Their closest change machine clinic in Manhattan is 42 Broadway on the first floor.
We can send this info out to you
Yeah.
guys, so you don't have to write it down.
And another really terrific one is the Center for Economic Progress. They have free financial coaches. Because the financial coaches are often linked with, it can be a big help. They can help you sit down and figure out what your budget should be and how to stay on a budget, work you towards your financial goals. If you're way more in debt than anybody in my generation ever was because of student debt. I printed that up, I thought Any of you who are in your 30s or in your 20s are saddled with much more debt before you even start out of the gate than me ever were. And sometimes you just need more help than, my index card can have. So the Center for Economic Progress, I think, is in Chicago, but they have a website also. And those are two really good agencies to find free financial help. Now there's no time for anybody else.
I was just wondering if, Melissa, you want to speak at all about what you've been telling your daughters at their age now? You're 13, almost 14.
Yeah, I've got 12 and 9, so,
Yeah.
I mean,
Have you started speaking to them about any of this?
not
Young?
No, not really to this level. I mean, more about work ethic and what their job is school, and that, I mean, they understand in my town, there are not a lot of moms that work. My biggest thing is that they need to keep working, and having a two-parent family that works gives us a lot more stability. I mean, I live in a town in 2008 that Lehman Brothers went out, and it was a big problem. I mean, there were people who didn't know if they could keep their houses and everything else. And, I see a lot of younger people out here that, in fact, Maggie said the other day, she just got married and they're combining bank accounts and everything with her husband. It's easy to just say, you handle it, I'm working, I'm running around, I'm taking care of, making school lunches, whatever you're doing. My mother's best advice to me was you take the checkbook when you get married. Right? My husband has a cash card,
I want her mother.
and he's on a need-to-know basis, right? I mean, he can't even log into our account. Not that he wants to. He literally, after we were married about 4 years, said, I need to log in. I gave him the login, he forgot, he never logged in. But he does have a passcode to get cash. I run all the bills, I take care of the mortgage, because I have a lot of friends at my age now that are married 15, 20 years and are all getting divorced, not all, but a lot. And then many of them haven't worked because they gave up their career, because sometimes it's really hard to work, to be a mom, to be a wife, to be, to have girlfriends, which, kind of goes out the window. But even sometimes you feel like I'm paying more for babysitting or daycare and I'm running 16 hours a day, if you don't keep your foot in the door, and different careers give you different opportunities, and I feel like we spoke a little bit about some of the benefits of big companies and small companies, and sometimes you have more flexibility with a small company to leave and go to a dentist appointment or go to a preschool, Mother's Day sing for, that comes out like inconveniently at like 10:30 in the morning, because that's when they do these things. And, it's important to keep your foot in the door, because if you try and get back at 45 into the workforce, I mean, think about it, if you'd missed the past 15 years of lighting, you'd be stuck in fluorescent, right? You might be at a T8, not a T, right? You couldn't get back in. And so I think it's really important as women, especially the younger women in this group, that whether you're married, whether you have children, whether you don't, you have to look out for your own interests. And when we set up our house, when we bought our house, we looked at it as we did it right around 2008, of course. If one of us lost our job, could we still manage this house? Maybe you'd have to cut out a vacation or maybe, some of the luxuries, but could we still run the house and not change anything else in our life on one salary? And, that gives a lot more opportunity, for saving and things like that. And we did have a lot of school debt, or my husband had a lot of school debt. to pay off. That was, you know, a big push the first few years of our marriage, but I think it's really important for just not to let the men say, I'll take care of it, or I know finance better, or you want to know where every dollar is, where it's going, and right, you know what, my husband makes the school lunches. Have fun with that, right? I mean, you know, and I mean, I'm an MBA, what? My husband, what?
That sounds about right, Adam's a good cook.
Yeah, my husband's an excellent cook, he does the grocery shopping, and I take it, you know, of the house, of the the plumber, if something breaks, or the mortgage, or refinancing. I make sure that I'm involved in all of that, because God forbid something happens to him, or you never know. I mean, on average, half the US, their divorces, you never want to think it'll happen, but I want to make sure that myself and my girls are well protected if anything happens. And I think, you know, sometimes, especially with the little kids, and they're in school for like 2 hours a day, and you're trying to get like before school care, and then someone to take them to 2 hours of school, and then someone to pick them up, and then run them to like a singing class or a dance. It's like the craziest few years, but it's worth hanging in there to do it, because once they're in school full time, it's really hard to get back into the workforce if you don't stay in it somehow.
Yeah, sometimes it's best to maybe, you know, sort of downsize your career a little, but not get rid of it altogether.
Yeah.
To make some changes while your kids are little, so that you can go back.
And it depends what you do. I have friends who are speech pathologists. They might have worked 2 days a week, but they could load up 2 long days a week, and then as their kids got older. With us, it's a little harder, but you might be able to do a day remotely, or, you know, there are other.
Especially if you're married, I think it's really important for the people that aren't married. To know that you have a substantial cushion if anything happens.
Right.
That you've got 6 months to a year's worth of bills.
Absolutely.
Set aside.
Again, paying
Yeah,
disability insurance is key.
But Aggie, I wanted to just give you the opportunity to speak about working at a small firm, because a lot of the things that we've spoken about, well, like the 401k contributions and all that, aren't necessarily available in some of the small firms, but there are benefits.
Yeah, so I've been at my company for 5 years, and probably 2 or 3 years ago is when we first got a 401k at the firm. And part of that is just, yes, financially doing it for a small firm is harder. But, you know, Jill, my boss, she's amazing. So she also does matching, which she called me, or after we were like setting up the 401k, and she was like, they said I could only match 4%. I want to match 8%. I was like, what? That's my Jill for you. So I've been very fortunate with that, but we don't do like a company-wide healthcare plan, because it doesn't make sense, especially with today's healthcare situation. And now me being in New York, it's even harder with the Dallas firm and the New York firm. So what she does as a way to provide a benefit is basically give us an allowance of what a bronze or silver level plan would be for you, and you get your personal plan, right? And so that's something, you know, if it's important for you or your family, you have health issues, but you want this job, that's something you can negotiate with an employer and bring it up as an option. You know, this portion of my salary is going towards a healthcare plan. And so that's a way to kind of balance the benefits and prioritize, you know, what you need from your employer and what will work with them. Another thing that Jill does is profit sharing, which is amazing because it motivates us as employees to provide profit for the company, because for those of you who don't know, profit sharing at the end of the year, our bonus is based on the profit of the company. So we get a percentage of that profit as our bonus. So, you know, it motivates us to not only, you know, be more efficient and diligent in our work, but now I'm going out and finding clients and projects to bring in to provide more profit and grow the firm. So it, you know, enlarges our skill set, makes us more valuable to the company, and then we get rewarded for that. So those are some ways, as a small firm of 7 people, in, you know, both locations, that we can, you know, kind of still be very satisfied with our employment. So.
Great. So does anybody else have any other questions? We've had a really good talk back as we went along. So if not, just wanted to say a huge thank you to Susan, Melissa, and Maggie. This was really fantastic.